So in today's unrelated news, unless you've been living under a rock, and man, I wish I knew where that rock was, you'll probably be very aware of the Trump classified document scandal and now criminal court case where he's facing a potential of, I think, like 400 years or something like that for withholding documents. And the reality is he's really in trouble for the obstruction of justice and the withholding of the documents rather than even having the documents themselves. If he'd just returned them, he probably wouldn't have been in trouble. But the fact that the FBI raided his place because he wouldn't give them back and found them in a toilet amongst other places, he's just asked for some trouble. So on today's Morning Joe with Joe, forget his squash face name, and Micah, they were discussing it. And I thought it was pretty interesting, even though I'm not a huge fan of them, although they seem delightful. And I bet they're a lot of fun at parties, right? So not that kind of party, right? Just normal party, like a tea party, right? Nothing weird. Let's take a listen to what Micah and Joe and one of their experts had to say. Roll the tape.
Ken, we want to look at the Mar-a-Lago documents case and parallel it to a similar case.
Well, what just happened? Because, you know, Ken, we've been saying for some time, if anybody else had done this, if any member of Congress had done this, we had Mark Palomaropoulos said, if I had done this as a CIA analyst, if I took one document, I'd be fired on the spot. If I took more than that, I'd go to jail. Well,
I don't want to distract too much from the news story, but I got to say, I always thought that Micah was a very impressive person. I thought her father was a very impressive person. But with all this surgery, I got to say, she kind of reminds me of an owl.
The sort of low energy speech in.
Yeah, we saw that on Tuesday night, right in the.
But I don't want to be disrespectful. Please, let's roll the tape again.
Well, a former FBI analyst has been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for very similar charges to the ones against Donald Trump right now. A judge handed down the sentence to Kendra Kingsbury yesterday after she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of unlawfully retaining documents related to national defense. She took hundreds of classified documents just like Trump, took them home just like Trump, many containing intelligence sources and methods tied to the government's counterintelligence efforts.
Just like Trump.
Unlike Trump's case, though, she was not accused of showing that classified material to anybody else. So hers wasn't really as serious as Donald Trump's.
So just to recap, this woman who has a name like a superhero or supervillain, really, from a comic book, she, just like the former president, took home all these documents and bizarrely also stored them in a toilet and just decided not to give them back. So the parallels here between the Trump toilet incident and this Kendrick shitter place, it's really quite remarkable. Back to the tape.
The judge basically asked her, Ken, what in the world were you thinking, taking documents pertaining to America's national defense and leaving them in your bathroom? Does that sound familiar, Ken?
Oh, it sounds familiar, not just to Ken, but the in the bathroom thing is just bizarre. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure if there's any personality similarities. I have no idea. But the bathroom, I don't have the biggest house in the world, but I would find somewhere a little bit drier and safe from splashes than a bathroom. But maybe that's just me. Back to the tape.
Yeah, Joe, Kendra Kingsbury was a counterintelligence analyst for the FBI for 12 years. She's a resident of
Kendrick Kingsbury, the counterintelligence agency. This stuff, I sometimes think that we might be in some kind of simulation because this shit is too crazy sometimes. Or maybe it's just America today. Who knows? Back to the tape.
Dodge City, Kansas. And as you said, she took home all sorts of documents, 20,000 documents they found in her home, 386 of which were classified. I'll tell you one more difference between her and Donald Trump. According to the court documents, the most serious, the most sensitive documents she took home were classified at the secret level, not the top secret level, which was the designation given to many of the documents found at Donald Trump's compound in Mar-a-Lago. She got 3 years, 10 months in prison. Her lawyers asked for probation. They cited a series of very sad circumstances in her life, health struggles, deaths of relatives. But the judge essentially went along with almost all of the government's recommendation.
Obviously, the former president will be treated a little bit differently than Kendrick Kingsbury, Kendall Kingsbury, the counterintelligence agent. However, I suspect that just like her litany of like, hey, I was having a rough time and like I had a pair of pants that were a little bit tight and like things just weren't going very well for me, that probably went over about as well with the judge some of the former president's recent discussions and interviews where he said, well, I just didn't have time, and they had my golf shirts and my underpants and stuff in there. So we'll see how this goes for him, because it didn't seem to go quite so well for Kendall Kingsbury, the counterintelligence agency. Back to the tape.
And said that this was a serious threat to the national security of the United States. In the sentencing memo, the prosecutor said that essentially there's no way to know whether anyone, any foreign adversary or anyone not entitled to see this material actually saw it because it was improperly stored. That would be exactly the same thing they would say, even assuming they can't prove that Donald Trump actually showed the documents to people in 2 cases. They would still say that they were stored insecurely in various places at Mar-a-Lago where people were streaming through, and there's really no way to tell. There's no way to disprove that a foreign adversary didn't put an agent in and take a look at some of those documents or steal them.
Well, I think this might be overblowing it a little bit, right? And I think this guy's kind of enjoying his moment here with Micah and Joe Smallface. But I think the point is very true, right? Mar-a-Lago is not a secure facility, and to the point he was originally going with, no one is suggesting that this woman showed the documents to anyone, but there seems to be tape of the former president incriminating himself and showing documents that he shouldn't have had to other people. So in all respects, this is so much more serious. Back to the tape.
That is the situation. And, she did plead guilty, which we don't expect Donald Trump to do. So you get a little bit of a benefit for pleading guilty, although she didn't fully accept responsibility. And there was a little weirdness in her case. So they found that they were never really sure why she took these documents, but they found that she made phone calls to the subjects of FBI counterterrorism investigations. They were never able to explain that. She didn't explain it. So that was a little bit of a hint as to some weird motive going on there. But again, no dissemination to a foreign adversary, 3 years, 10 months in prison. That's what happens to regular people who take home classified documents. We've seen it time and again. This is just the latest case, guys.
So that's it. I think the key there is in the last minute, regular people, right? I don't know that the former president, who I used to be kind of a big fan of in many respects until I, got to know him a little bit better, right? Or got to observe him on a larger scale than just this reality show where he seemed to be very benevolent and self-deprecating. Funny how much can change when you actually get to understand anyone. But I think that the reporter's final point there is most salient. If a normal person will get 4 years for 2 counts and really not doing anything so disruptive, it'll be very interesting to see what happens to a former president who's being charged with a lot more, and there seems to be a lot of evidence of him having done a lot more. So interesting times ahead. I hope you have a magnificent day.
Right in the